Now, a big story that is unfolding in South Africa is the Mazanga Commission. Today is day one of the Mazanga Commission of Inquiry into alleged corruption and political interference in South Africa's criminal justice system. It started today in the country's capital, Pretoria. The hearings follow explosive claims made in July by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, who alleged that a criminal syndicate had infiltrated law enforcement, the judiciary, and other state institutions. Chaired by retired Constitutional Court Justice Mbuyiseni Mazanga, the commission will probe accusations involving senior officials, including Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, who is currently on leave. We do have our reporter, Dimakazo Lishoro, who is following this story, and she is at the commission and covering the story for us. But before we go into this particular story, which is making headlines in the country, we go to Malawi, where our reporter, that is Michael Mbewe, is on the ground covering the story for us, where early vote counts from northern Malawi showing former President Peter Mutharika taking an early lead. However, projections indicate the election could head to a runoff, with no candidate expected to surpass the 50% threshold required for an outright win. Michael, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu. Good afternoon to our listeners in the continent of Africa. Lulu.
Now, Michael, unpack for us. Voting has taken place. Did everything happen according to the Electoral Commission's plans yesterday in terms of the closing of polling stations, and with early vote counting indicating that Peter Mutharika has taken the lead?
Well, Lulu, you are quite correct. We are coming to you live from here at the National Tally Center, which is at the Bingu International Conference Center in the capital, Lilongwe. You are right, indeed. This is where now all the, the results for this very important election in the SADC region are being, tallied or being populated. Indeed, you are right in the intro that the former President Peter Mutharika is emerging as the early, front runner in Malawi's 2025 general elections, with unofficial results showing a strong lead in many regions, including areas traditionally loyal to incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera, Malawi Congress Party. So something that we have noticed is that there has been, an indication of voter apathy, because we recall 7.2 million people were registered to vote. At the current moment, we are seeing figures saying that about 4 million people turned to vote, and which is giving you a 64% turnout in comparison to in 2029, where we had about 74% turnout. But I'm not alone here. I'm being joined by now an analyst. So thank you so much for joining us. His name is Peter Jengwa. Brother Peter, thank you so much for joining us. We are live on Channel Africa. Sir, yes, yesterday Malawians were voting, and now we are now anticipating, the results. Just, from your perspective, what do you see coming out of these results? As we have seen, you've heard me talking to my colleague in South Africa, that we have seen, a large withdrawal of people not, really coming out to come and vote after a very good start in the morning.
Well, just to say that a voter turnout of 64, close to 65% is obviously not very high. But if you look at elections in the region, not just in Malawi, in other countries in the region as well, that's about the level at which people turn out to vote. In the last election in South Africa, the voter turnout was much lower than that. So yes, from the point of view of Malawians, they would have wanted a higher voter turnout, but 65% is still a good number. There are a number of reasons why people have not turned out. Some of them are logistical. A decision was made by the election management body here, the MEC, that persons can only vote in places where they're registered. In the past, you were able to transfer to be able to, if you're working as a journalist, you're registered in one place, but due to cause you are in a different place, you're able to vote in a different place. Now that is not possible in this election, and that also goes for many other service providers, including people in civil society who want to be observers of elections and so on. So, and students who were in school at the time of registering and now they're out of school, all those will have contributed to lowering the number of people who actually turned out to vote. But still, 65 is a good number. In terms of what we are expecting, I know people are looking at pockets of results, and uh, uh, but that is not enough to tell us a full picture of what we can expect to emerge. It's still early days. Anything can happen. Early indications are that, yes, former President Peter Mutharika does have an advantage, but it is an advantage which, from my experience of covering elections in this country, that can be wiped out in no time. So we're still early. We cannot say with certainty that the wind of direction is that former President Mutharika will carry the day.
So I want to come back to the very important point that you have, shared with us, that we are seeing a decline in the number of people voting in the region of SADC. What do you think is contributing to that?
Well, voters not turning up can be attributed to a number of things. One of them is when people are not satisfied with the choices that are available. You look at the contesting candidates and you're sort of convinced that any of them represent your wishes and your aspirations. Voters tend to stay away. But of course, others are logistical problems. In a country like Malawi, if you say that you cannot vote in an area other than where you registered from, when you have moved, then it becomes a bit of a problem. There are other issues as well that perhaps our region should be thinking about. Malawi has got a population of plus or minus 22 million. Of those, eligible voters are about half. So you're talking about 11 million eligible voters. Even at the stage of registering, it was just 7 that registered. So a significant chunk was left out or did not show up to even register. Now, in other countries, you register and there is a voter register that remains there forever. In Malawi, you register for every election. That also tends to impact turnout, because then some people don't want to keep going to register, especially when at the time of registering you have to queue. People have got a lot of other problems, and therefore you don't want to keep inviting them to queue for this, to queue for that. That can be a problem. So a system where people are registering once and maybe only updating for future elections would probably help. And then, of course, as we move forward, start to think along the lines of allowing our citizens who are in the diaspora to also be able to vote. It doesn't happen in Malawi. I know it does not happen in Zambia, our neighboring country, and in many other countries in the region. But these are the sort of things that we must be thinking about to improve the quality of our elections so that they produce outcomes that improve our countries.
So you have countries like South Africa who make provisions for the elderly, the disabled, those that are not able to walk to polling stations. But I've seen in polling stations that I've walked, people being carried, don't you think also that's something that has to be considered, being carried in, wheelchairs, some being driven by cars to come, and some can't even walk.
It is very important that we learn from experiences of other countries. If it's being done in South Africa, surely Malawi should be able to look at it and see what we can borrow from there, what we can learn, what we can do. In the Malawi election, the regulations are that the elderly, persons with disabilities, pregnant women, and candidates in the elections, when they arrive at polling stations, they're not supposed to be in a queue. They go to the front, vote, and must leave to go and do other things. With reference to candidate, the idea is that you cannot be a candidate and be on a queue and continue to interact with potential voters, because then that would be seen as canvassing for support for yourself. So if you're a candidate in Malawi, again, the small difference with the South African election, in Malawi, you vote for individuals in all elections. So you vote for a president. You have people who you vote for to be president. You do not vote for a political party. Similarly, those who you vote for represent constituencies and they become members of parliament, or they become local councillors. They represent wards. Now, candidates in those elections cannot go at a voting station and queue, be together with voters in a long line. They must go, be given a chance to vote quickly and go home, so that they do not have an added opportunity of continuing to campaign on the day of voting.
So there is one more thing that I also noticed. There is an area that we went where some of the presiding officers said that some women were coming to polling station on behalf of their husbands. I saw a gap in voter education, because when they came there, they were chased out. They were returned back to say, no. Those husbands must come here and represent themselves.
Yeah. Well, I must confess, I'm hearing this for the first time from you, but I do know that when you look at people who register to vote, the majority of them in the Malawi context are women. So more women register than men. Also, among those who register, more women show up to vote than men. Men generally tend to be relaxed about these things. I think it is a question of standing in a queue to vote. If you do not believe that your vote is going to make a difference, you don't really care that much. You can stay away, which perhaps can be an explanation as to why some husbands will have said, go and vote on my behalf. But certainly the rules, as the officers will have told these women, are that every voter must go on their own and cast their vote. And also, we do have a challenge in Malawi of illiteracy. So sometimes even to provide information to people, civic education, to inform them about what the requirements are, what you're supposed to do, that can be limited by the ability to comprehend by those people who you are teaching, the potential voters, because of low levels. You may have seen at different polling stations, they were being arranged in alphabetical order of their surnames. A lot of people could not even know that their surname starts with which letter, because they haven't been to school. So at every turn, you needed an officer to guide them, to let them know that with your surname, this is the queue you must be on. Otherwise, they were just going, they were standing in whatever queue they thought was shorter and was convenient. So this is a result of low levels of literacy, something that Malawi and perhaps the wider region, our region, must be thinking about addressing.
Okay. In wrapping now, maybe in 20 seconds or 15 seconds, have you heard of any incident that is disturbing across the country, coming out from reporters or wherever you've been?
I've covered elections in this country for a long time. These have been one of the most peaceful elections, I'll have to say. But I must hasten to add that generally in Malawi elections, you tend to see violence after or during the time of announcement of results, not on voting day. So I'm not really surprised that on voting day it was all peaceful, but there is one center where voters burnt voting materials because one of them said they suspected they had seen an already marked ballot. So that caused a bit of a problem. Some ballots were burnt, and so there was a postponement in that particular voting station, and for that reason voting extended to beyond 4 o'clock local time to 8 p.m. That's the only incident that I've heard of. No one was injured, no one, not all the material were affected. So it's good on that in that way. But certainly, yes, there was that incident that was widely reported and acknowledged by the election management body.
We appreciate your insights. Thank you so much for giving us that perspective.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Lulu, that's Mr. Peter Jegwa, who was, just analyzing us on how far, as we are awaiting, the much anticipated results of this very gigantic, contentious elections here in Malawi. Lulu.
Well, Michael, I guess we'll get further updates as the day progresses and counting continues, and hopefully
different dynamics.
Yeah,
you can see what he has articulated.
And the fact that it's only 64% of people who came out to cast their ballots. Very, very interesting. It would be interesting to find out from people who haven't gone out to cast their ballots why they haven't gone through.
Why they haven't gone to? I was engaging with the young. They said that disillusioned. They say they don't know whether to choose Lulu, Mike, because some of the top candidates have been tried and tested, and they have failed. They were gearing for, Chilima, the former deputy president.
Yes.
Everybody's talking about him, but yes, I mean, it's when you talk to this one, it's talking a different language. So it's a very, very complex election here in Malawi, Lulu.
Well, a lot more to come through. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We'll leave it there for today. That's our reporter in Lilongwe, Michael Mbewe. He is on the ground covering the elections in Malawi, and a lot happening on that front. It is 25 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.